Hello, my name is Jim Bratton. Because of the nature of construction work, hazards exist in practically every workplace. Sharp edges, falling objects, flying sparks, potentially dangerous chemicals, noise, and roadway traffic are just a few of the hazards we may routinely encounter while we're on the job. In many cases, these hazards have been minimized or eliminated by using a system called hierarchy of controls. Engineering controls, such as guardrails, barricades, or machine guards, may be installed to help protect workers from dangerous areas. Or less hazardous substances may be substituted to reduce risk to workers. Administrative controls may also be put into place. Where hazardous levels of dust or noise are present, for example, work may be planned to limit the amount of time employees are exposed to the hazard. Options may include using shorter or rotating shifts, or coordinating work during off hours to minimize the hazard to surrounding workers. A third method of hazard protection is personal protective equipment. Even if engineering and administrative controls have been employed, hazards may still exist. This is when PPE comes into play. PPE is equipment worn to minimize exposure to a variety of hazards. Examples of PPE include eye and face protection, protective hearing devices, hard hats, respirators, gloves, high visibility workwear, foot protection, and fall protection systems. OSHA requires employers to provide PPE when necessary to protect their employees from workplace hazards that can cause injury or illness. OSHA also requires employees to properly wear and maintain their PPE to protect themselves from those hazards. If you don't wear PPE, or if your PPE fails, then you may be directly exposed to hazards in the workplace. That's why we will be discussing the importance of PPE here today. Now let's take a look at the different kinds of PPE and explain how you can use this equipment to help ensure your personal safety. Thousands of people are blinded each year from work-related eye injuries that could have been prevented with the proper selection and use of eye and face protection. Eye injuries alone cost more than $500 million per year in lost production time, medical expenses, and worker compensation. Personal protective equipment for the eyes and face is designed to prevent or lessen the severity of injuries to workers. Your employer should select eye and face protectors based on the anticipated hazards, such as impact, heat, chemicals, dust, or optical radiation hazards. You will know that your safety glasses have been rated for construction hazards if they have been stamped with the Z87.1 designation. In general, wear safety glasses or face shields anytime there is a risk of foreign objects or substances getting into the eye, such as during welding, cutting, grinding, nailing, or when working with concrete and/or harmful chemicals, or when exposed to flying particles. In some cases, such as when grinding or cutting with an abrasive cutting wheel, you will be required to wear safety glasses and a face shield. Wear safety glasses or face shields when exposed to any electrical hazards, including work on energized electrical systems. Be sure to consult the applicable National Fire Protection Association 70E tables for the appropriate protective equipment for these hazards. Keep in mind that prescription corrective lenses will not provide adequate protection against occupational eye and face hazards. Wear eye protection that incorporates the prescription into the design, or wear additional eye protection over your prescription lenses. Also remember that simply adding side shields to your prescription lenses may not properly protect your eyes. Some prescription lenses are too small to comply with applicable requirements, and some lens materials may shatter on impact. Exposure to high levels of noise can cause irreversible hearing loss or impairment, as well as physical and psychological stress. When you're exposed to high levels of noise, always wear appropriate hearing protection. Hearing protection includes earplugs or earmuffs. The need for hearing protection depends on the loudness of the noise as measured in decibels and the duration of the exposure to the noise. Some types of hearing protection include single-use earplugs, preformed or molded earplugs, and earmuffs. Single-use earplugs are typically made of foam, silicone rubber, or other pliable materials. They are self-forming, and when properly inserted, they work as well as most molded earplugs. Preformed or molded earplugs must be individually fitted following manufacturer's requirements and can be disposable or reusable. Reusable plugs should be cleaned after each use. In some cases, your employer may provide custom molded plugs that are fitted by a professional. These plugs can be very effective and are suitable for use by only one person. Earmuffs require a perfect seal around the ear. Glasses, facial hair, long hair, or facial movements, such as chewing, may reduce the protective value of earmuffs. When using hearing protection, be sure to consult the manufacturer's instructions for the proper protection level and proper use and fit requirements. Clean earplugs regularly and replace those you cannot clean. Many construction workers are at risk of head injuries caused by falling or flying objects, bumps to their heads from fixed objects, or accidental head contact with electrical hazards. A head injury can impair an employee for life, or it can be fatal. Wearing a hard hat is one of the easiest ways to protect your head from injury. Hard hats can protect workers from impact and penetration hazards, as well as electrical shock and burn hazards. Wear hard hats if you are exposed to risk of falling objects, bumping your head against fixed objects, such as exposed pipes or beams, or if there is a possibility of accidental head contact with electrical hazards. Be aware of special project or contract requirements that may require wearing hard hats at all times. Wear a hard hat that is appropriate for the hazard. Class C hard hats are intended to reduce the force of impact of falling objects, but offer no electrical protection. Class E hard hats are designed to reduce the force of impact of falling objects and to reduce the danger of contact with exposed high-voltage electrical conductors. Sample shells are proof tested at 20,000 volts. Class G helmets are intended to reduce the force of impact of falling objects and to reduce the danger of contact with exposed low-voltage electrical conductors. For certification, sample shells are proof tested at 2200 volts of electrical charge. Whatever hard hat you wear, make sure it fits properly. Head protection that is either too large or too small is inappropriate for use. Wear your hard hat brim forward to help protect your face from impact. Be sure to consider integral hard hats and welding or cutting shields when performing these operations. Your head should not be unprotected because of improper equipment or inadequate pre-planning. Inspect hard hats routinely for dents, cracks, or deterioration. Do not cover your hard hat with stickers, paint, or other materials that could prevent a thorough inspection. Replace hard hats after a heavy blow or electrical shock. Be especially aware of damage that can be caused by contact with chemicals or solvents or by excessive sunlight. Just like any other plastics, such as videos or CDs, your hard hat should never be stored on the dashboard or in the back window of your car. Follow the manufacturer's requirements for care, maintenance, and replacement schedule. Air contaminated with harmful dust, fogs, fumes, gases, smokes, sprays, or vapors can pose serious health hazards. Sometimes engineering controls are not feasible or fully effective. In such cases, workers must use appropriate respirators. A respirator is a protective face piece, hood, or helmet that is designed to protect the wearer against a variety of harmful airborne agents. There are three main types of respirators: supplied air respirators, which provide pressurized breathing air; self-contained units that have air in a tank that you carry on your back; and air purifying respirators that use filters to clean the air you breathe. Select respirators based on the hazard to which you will be exposed. These hazards include particulates, vapors, oxygen deficiency, or a combination of hazards. Use a respirator only if you have been trained in proper use, maintenance, and limitations. Fit test respirators prior to initial use and at least once annually to make sure they seal to your face and that there are no leaks. A proper fit is essential for respirators to be effective. Before each use, make sure all connections are tight, that the respirator is free of damage or defects, and that it seals correctly on your face. Test every time you put on a respirator and throughout the shift to make sure you are being properly protected. Maintain respirators properly. Clean and disinfect dirty respirators and store properly to keep clean and protect from damage or contamination.
Workplace hazards to the hands include exposure to harmful substances through skin absorption, severe cuts or lacerations, severe abrasions, chemical burns, thermal burns, and harmful temperature extremes. Always wear hand protection when you risk exposure to potentially hazardous conditions.
There are many types of gloves available to protect against a wide variety of hazards. These include gloves made of leather, canvas or metal mesh, fabric and rubber-coated gloves, and voltage-rated gloves. When selecting gloves, use gloves specifically designed for the hazards and the task. For example, wear heavy-duty rubber gloves for concrete work, welding gloves for welding, and insulated gloves and sleeves when exposed to electrical hazards. Remember, gloves designed for one function may not protect against a different function, even though they may appear to be an appropriate protective device. Inspect gloves before use to ensure that they are not torn, punctured, or ineffective in any way. Discard and replace any glove which impairs protective ability. Make sure gloves fit snugly. In addition to following company or site-specific requirements for hand protection, wear the proper gloves as often as possible. Hand injuries are all too common in construction and all too preventable.
Construction employees working on highway and/or road construction zones often risk being struck by traffic. Even the most attentive drivers and equipment operators may not see workers on foot, especially when light levels are low, at night, or during bad weather, for example. The best protection against these kinds of accidents is to wear high visibility clothing. Construction workers risk foot injuries from hazards such as falling or rolling objects, sharp objects, wet and slippery surfaces, molten metals, hot surfaces, and electrical hazards.
A study by the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that fewer than 25% of workers receiving foot injuries were wearing safety shoes or boots at the time of the injury. In nearly all of those cases, safety shoes or boots would likely have prevented the injury.
Don't take your feet for granted. Wear appropriate foot protection when necessary.
If you are exposed to potential foot injuries from crushing or penetrating actions, hot surfaces, falling objects, or hazardous substances, or are required to work in abnormally wet locations, use appropriate foot protection such as steel-toed safety shoes and/or boots. Safety shoes and boots provide both impact and compression protection. Where necessary, safety shoes can be obtained which provide puncture protection. Wear special types of shoes or foot guards when special hazards exist. For example, Wear leggings or high leather boots for hot surfaces and/or substances. And rubber or synthetic boots with toxic chemicals. Wear rubber boots when working in concrete or in water. Wear electrical non-conductive or insulating safety shoes when exposed to electrical hazards. Wear metatarsal guards when operating a jackhammer. Select protective footwear appropriate for the hazard. Inspect protective footwear prior to each use. Check the soles of shoes for pieces of metal or other embedded items that could present electrical or tripping hazards. Follow manufacturers' recommendations for cleaning and maintenance of protective footwear.
Wearing appropriate personal protective equipment can help protect you from many workplace injuries and illnesses. Follow these tips to help ensure safety and benefit fully from the protection provided by PPE.
Know when PPE is necessary. Know what kind of PPE is necessary. Wear PPE properly. Know how to put it on correctly. Take it off, adjust it, and wear it. Understand the limitations of PPE and protection from injury. Maintain PPE properly. Inspect PPE before each use. Do not use damaged or defective PPE. Report the need to repair or replace PPE to your supervisor. When assessing the need for PPE, be aware of special hazards, such as working over or around water, using chainsaws, working on energized electrical parts, or working with caustic chemicals. Select PPE based on exposure to all potential hazards. Do not rely on personal protective devices alone to provide protection against hazards. Use PPE in conjunction with guards and engineering controls and sound manufacturing practices put in place by your employer.
Hazards exist at every workplace. Sharp edges, falling objects, flying sparks, chemicals, and noise, just to name a few. When engineering and administrative controls are not feasible or do not provide sufficient protection, wear appropriate personal protective equipment to reduce exposure to workplace hazards. It could save your life.